all the subjects. This is an actual transmission coming out of a HARP antenna located in Alaska. I found out that they love to run these at nighttime while the Americans are sleeping, utilizing certain brainwave frequencies. But we won't expound on the subject. Another place where mind control utilizing electronics was experimented at was Montauk on the island of New York. Several books were written. People began to discuss some very far-out theories about time travel. This was a cover. There was no such thing as time travel conducted on Montauk, but there was mind control. This particular radar dish is 3 football fields long. If it's turned in a certain direction on a certain frequency, you will begin to think what is programmed at you. But we have to stay away from the subject of electronic mind control. We're going to go to the print media. We're going to use some ads. I would like to use 1,000 to show you, but some of the advertisers, some of the companies will get very upset. Not casting the blame on anyone, we will show you a few examples so that when you leave this presentation and our video watchers who purchase this video, they will be able to look at billboards and magazines in a brand new light. Before I get into the actual meat, the actual examples, I want to relate an incident that happened about 10 years ago. I worked for about 35 years trying to crack the code in advertising and in subliminals. It was very slow. When I began to open up the actual language, the actual symbols, the methods, the techniques that were being utilized, I had to tell someone. I had a best friend. He became a captain of a fire department. He stopped by my house one day, and I downloaded very quickly. When I'm communicating on a roll, I call that downloading, just like a computer. You let loose of tons of information in a matter of minutes. Pretty soon I noticed his eye began to twitch, and he got very nervous. And he wouldn't say whether he believed I was telling the truth or if I knew what I was talking about. So he drove down the road and he put it to the Lord this way. He said, Lord, Al says there's a lot of secret messages hidden on billboards, in magazine ads, in television commercials, in cartoons, in movies. He says, I don't know whether to believe or not. So he said, I'm going to give you a little test. I'm going to walk in the first library I pass, and I'm going to pull out a book, and there has to be something hidden on page 666. If you'll show me something extra on page 666 with the first book I pull out of the library, then I'll take that as a confirmation that you're revealing things to Al about subliminals and mind control. This particular friend did not know the difference between the reference department and fiction. He was not a reader. So he went into the library, he pulled out a volume, he quickly turned to the back, and guess what? It did not even go to 666. So he was convinced for a moment that I did not know what I was talking about. As he placed the book back on the shelf, he noticed the book was volume 1 and volume 2. So he said, well, if I pull volume 2 out, I'm still in the same book, and this is the book he removed from the shelf. Volume 2, it was a trade names dictionary. He didn't have the slightest idea what he had pulled out. This is volume 2, and he began to search in the book, and he turned to page 666. You'll notice at the bottom of the page, there's your proof. It was page 666. But he asked for a special sign, something on this page to show that it was not coincidence. If you will notice, there's a certain drug company listing a certain cold remedy, and it's been out for 80 years. It's this cold remedy 666 for your head colds. And a couple other companies that had 666 in their products. And it just happened to appear on page 666. He was convinced. We've stayed friends. I've shown him tens of thousands of ads. Now, we have to start in Scripture. It's very interesting. In the book of Revelation, talking about a future time, it states that the devil himself will be cast from the heavens and forced to come to the earth with his angels, and he will know that there is a very short time. But please notice in verse 9, and that great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceived what part of the world? he deceived the whole world. So my first question to you is, how in the world could he deceive everyone on this planet? And just how would he go about this? The answer, of course, is in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verse 3 and 4. And please notice it says that if our gospel is hid, it is hid to them that are lost, in whom the God of this world, he runs this world at the present time, has done what? He hath blinded the minds of them that believe not. So he must know something about the mind. He doesn't have to have electrodes wired into people's heads. He does not have to come by your house to see what you're reading. He works with the mind. Before we get in deep with examples, let's look at some interesting verses. In the Old Testament, we find a very interesting term. It's called double heart. I wonder what that could mean, double heart. Every truth has multiple witnesses. So let's look into the New Testament. Here we find in 1 Timothy chapter 3:8 a term double-tongued. Likewise, the deacons have to be grave, not double-tongued. The qualification for a deacon in a church was that he could not be double-tongued. What would this strange term, double-tongued, reflect? Could it be possible to say something in a sentence or speaking or writing and mean it two different ways? And again, here's your Greek word at the bottom, which simply means two-sounded. But the best one is yet to come. In James 1:8 we read, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. We will see a lot of double-minded, intended statements and secret communication here. But from the Word of God, it is foretold that these men are unstable in all their ways. Please remember the term, double-minded. And here's that great verse from Genesis chapter 3, and it says that the serpent was more subtle. Please remember that the term subliminal is only a synonym for this gospel word. Everything that's right and wrong, we're foretold in Scripture if you will only read. There isn't anything brand new. There isn't anything that can come from the scientists or underground organizations. There isn't anything that can come from an intelligence agency. But the Word of God hasn't pre-warned us. Please notice, he was more subtle than any beast of the field. And notice this, he was getting ready to trick Eve. There was a negative consequences about to fall on Eve for her actions. How did he hide this negative plan that he was getting ready to deceive Eve with? The first word recorded in the book of Genesis he ever spoke was the word yea. He was planning a negative consequences, but he hid it with an opposite. He worded it very carefully so that she would not be alarmed. So let's go to Webster's, unabridged. This is one of those 15-pound dictionaries found at the library. This is the third book I use behind the Bible in a concordance. It states in the definition from Webster's Unabridged, this is a 1966 edition, that the definition of subliminals is something that falls below the threshold of stimulation. In other words, it's not quite up to a level where you'll take notice and action. There's something else very interesting in this definition. Begin to look down into the sub-definition, because you'll find them admitting right in the dictionary, notice between the parentheses, that these techniques are used in TV advertising. I didn't say that. That's from Webster's Unabridged at your local library. They said such as techniques in TV advertising. There's only one Christian book on the subject of subliminals. It's already out of print. But I will give the man credit for bringing up these issues to Christian people. Here's his book, 1986. The man's name was John Tranter. His little book was called Images. Let's read a powerful quote from his book. Isn't it ironic that the advertisements you thought were so stupid are really intelligently directed towards your what? Towards your subconscious. The left side of your brain is your conscious part. That's the part you do your thinking with. That's where you do your mathematics, your grammar, your analyzing. The right half, the right hemisphere of your brain is your subconscious, and that is the part of your brain that subliminals are directed to. You are not conscious of the fact that you are constantly under subliminal bombardment. Please notice again in the quote that he says these are hard-hitting messages. This has been proven to affect your final behavior. He mentions your purchasing power. And he also states that these men are laughing all the way to the bank. We're going to have plenty of examples in just a moment. We're laying the groundwork. One of the first men to research subliminal information was Marshall McLuhan. He was situated in Canada. His books were printed there. He stated that any ad consciously attended to is comical. Some of them are very comical. He said that ads are not meant for conscious consumption. They are intended as subliminal pills for the subconscious. And again, he's saying that even the sociologists do not pay attention. Now, we studied in the Bible quickly. We read a couple verses showing there were terms such as double heart, double tongue, and double-minded. Let's go see what George Orwell had to say about the subject. This book has been read by most Americans. It's required in some colleges. Most people think it's just a fictional novel. A little bit of background about George Orwell first. He attended what was known as the Tavistock Institute in Great Britain. The Tavistock family donated a castle to the British military, and the purpose was that this castle would be used exclusively for research into mind control. George Orwell attended this Tavistock Institute, so we have to pay very close attention to what he said inside of his book, 1984. He said reality control, they called it in Newspeak. Almost reminds me of a certain news magazine. Doublethink. What could we mean by doublethink? To know and not to know, to be conscious of complete truthfulness while telling carefully constructed lies. Sounds like some politicians I know. To hold simultaneously, notice it's at the same time, to hold simultaneously two opinions which canceled out, knowing them to be contradictory, and believing in both of them, to use logic against logic, to repudiate morality while laying claim to it. And on he goes, saying that a man who's gifted in doublespeak and doublethink could say something for democracy, but actually it was carefully worded to hide his intentions because he was against democracy. Again, in this quote, there's something very powerful in his definition of the term doublethink. He states at the bottom of this quote that to actually understand the word doublethink involved the use of doublethink. It must be a very complicated process. Let's get into some actual examples. Notice I mentioned that this sounded like some politicians I know. In this old ad, the product is at the bottom, and it's not important to show what product they were selling. But everything that politicians do to control people is let out in this simple ad. Very many people have researched all across the country the technique of thesis, antithesis, synthesis. Here you see a politician making a point. He says it's a matter of opinion. But notice after those three dots to make you pause, 1, 2, 3, it says, but it's a fact. Now, how could something be an opinion but be a fact? You see, they're opposite statements to confuse you. And of course, the synthesis is the part at the bottom where they're selling you the product. So we could stay up till midnight, we could all get together and argue whether we should be Republicans or Democrats. Or we could stay up till tomorrow morning and we could argue about the two big powers in the world, the socialist and the communist, or the capitalist. But suppose there was someone in between. Suppose there was a power so rich, so very able to manipulate both. You set two opposites in motion so that people will join one side or the other. but the intention is control from the very beginning. In this advertisement from a farm journal in Des Moines, Iowa, 1910, you will find the oldest corporate logo in the United States. You may remember seeing this logo. Also, there is a subliminal word hidden in the very name of the company. The simplest example I can give you of subliminal programming is that there are 3 grade school words that control all the buying habits of everyone in the country. 3 simple grade school words are used continually, over and over in advertising. They are, you need, that's the name of our product, you get, you want. We won't show you specific examples so that the advertisers and the companies don't get mad and call me tomorrow. But these words are sometimes used up to 12 or 15 times in just simply 2 paragraphs. The 3 words are often used in the same sentence. You want, you need, you get. By the way, the Rothschild family purchased this company. It was later known as Nabisco. They also owned R.J. Reynolds before relinquishing them. So Malcolm Muggeridge, in his book, he was quoted in The Want Makers by Eric Clark. He said, history, when it's all finished, history will see advertising as one of the real evil things of our time. It's stimulating people to constantly want things, want this, want that. Where do you get that big notion to purchase? It may not be your own. It may be from constant conditioning, because these simple words are used thousands of times every day in simple advertising. Here's an example on a billboard. Please notice the eyes. This technique is also used in advertising. We'll have more to say about it later. There's one powerful word. It was the word want. To make sure you cannot escape the ad, some ads place the words in very large bold letters in their header. Okay, this particular product, no longer available, was a Nimrod camper. For those of you who research Scripture, Nimrod was a very important person. After the flood, he created what is known as the occult today. All false religions, all secret societies, witchcraft, Satanism, anything else you want to include on the dark side, they all honor and worship Nimrod. One of the 10 most important Christian books of all times is Alexander Hislop's The Two Babylons, available at your local Bible bookshop. There's much to say in there about Nimrod and how witchcraft, astrology, child sacrifice, and the holidays that people keep, they all come from Nimrod worship. Before we proceed any further, let's see what Webster's Unabridged says about the term occult. The term occult can be defined as anything that intervenes between your sight and the light. When I ask people on talk radio or in expos or in speaking engagements, I always say, give me a working definition, something that you might purchase that comes between your eyes and the light. Someone in the audience always says, how about sunglasses? I have one company, I will not name them, and 6 of their ads on sunglasses say write us, and they include their department number, that big infamous number 666. They've combined the working definition of the word occult with this infamous number. They're located in New York. On the internet, you can find a man named Michael Hoffman. He's written a book about mind control and secret societies. In his book, he has something very powerful to say. Michael Hoffman II said in his book, Masonic Mind Control, that the alchemical managers have bred over millennia, over 1,000 years, they said, they bred a human race that is most wretched, stupid, and ignorant. It's so unrivaled in thousands of years. He said these blind slaves say they are free and highly educated, even as they march behind, notice this word, signs. Have you ever taken time to analyze a sign or a billboard or a logo? He says a medieval peasant would have run away in panic-stricken terror from the signs that modern man embraces. Here's one. This is off of a building in Texas. I wonder what a medieval peasant would have thought of this particular emblem. More on it later. Its history and what year it appeared on your dollar bill, but please notice the eye. This is on a building in New York. It's constantly used in advertising. I have at least 1,000 select ads with this technique. When I first discovered this technique, I did not even have a name for it. My wife and I would simply say, I found a few more ads on the eye technique. I didn't understand it had great spiritual significance. Not only is it a psychological ploy, it is very uncomfortable if someone is staring at you. Sometimes eyes are used in hypnosis, but there's something even deeper beyond that. If you'll notice, in U.S. News and World Report, they were constantly in the 80s running this survey once a year on who runs America. But why did they choose this particular emblem when they're asking the survey who runs America? There was one banker from New York, Chase Manhattan, who was always in the top 10. But again, let's look to the scripture for all our answers. No one would believe in this term. This is superstition, and superstition does not exist in the 20th and 21st century America. So what does it say in Proverbs? He that hasteth to be rich hath an evil eye. What in the world are they talking about? Please notice the connotation. It is connected with someone that wants to be rich. I wonder if they want to get rich on Madison Avenue or Fifth Avenue in New York. Because this technique has been used in advertising for the past 100 years. But we need a second confirmation. Jesus said in the New Testament, there are a lot of evil things that can proceed out of a man's heart. One of them, he included an evil eye. A man's intentions can be seen in his eyes. You can be controlled by someone staring at you or controlling you. I went to the local bookstore and I discovered there was a book on the history of this whole subject. The term was known in ancient days as fascination. There are dozens of ads in the United States utilizing two eyes staring at you, and in the fine print they will mock you because they will include the term fascination. I was surfing the internet and found this strange site. Here's the grandson of Aleister Crowley, for researchers who are familiar with that name. It's the man who made black magic return to our century. There's much at your local library about Aleister Crowley, who died in 1947. Notice on this website, it's called the Order of the Evil Eye. We do not need to read all the particulars, but please notice at the bottom it says death to Christianity. I passed 6 or 8 billboards on my way driving here today where eyes were used to control the person in the car reading the advertisement on the billboard. But remember, Michael Hoffman said that a medieval peasant would run away from a lot of signs and symbols that we embrace today. This one is very well known. This is Lucent Technologies. I have a little story behind this. A good crowd of Christian people are very informed about Lucent Technologies. Traveling across the country, especially in Little Rock and Denver, I noticed the largest warehouses in the country are owned by Lucent Technologies. I also read that they purchased office space at 666 Fifth Avenue, New York, but it's quite okay. Someone has to purchase office space in that building. So notice, not only do we have a red circle, which is a very important symbol in the occult, but it is white in one place. It is the serpent biting its tail, which is an old symbol for Lucifer. All of these facts are very well known. Now I will introduce a fact that is not known. has not been discussed by researchers in this country. It is actually a Hebrew letter. It is the Hebrew letter Samic. And this letter is portrayed by this symbol. But the Hebrew letter Samic means a sign or a prop. Notice this is a lucent sign. I was at an expo in Columbus, Ohio. I had a friend travel all the way from Detroit to exchange information. He was a retired dental surgeon. Someone told us there was a headquarters at the edge of town. He said, "Al, would you like me to rush out, get a photograph for your research?" I said, "Yes, make sure you get the red O on the sign." So this retired dental surgeon rushed out to get it before it got too dark. This is a public street. I suppose it's a public building, but when he snapped the photograph, the security guard came out and threatened to arrest him. But my friend was an only child. Even though he's 65, headed towards his 70s, he still gets his way. So he backed off very slowly, talking at the same time, until he got close to the car, and he threw his camera in and drove off. I did not know it was against the law to photograph a sign in a major city. I guess we have a lot to learn, don't we? Have you seen this emblem before? There was a controversy in the 80s. This is a typical article that appeared in the newspapers discussing this symbol on a lot of products. There was a big fuss. There was a boycott. People took extreme measures. I do not agree. They went to the plant at Procter & Gamble. They threw paint on some of the employees' cars. That is not how you deal with issues, whether you are right or wrong. You don't take up violence. You don't create a wrong against a wrong. The way you fight evil is get to the bottom of things and get the truth out. You can prop up a lie, but a truth will stand on its own. The president of the company made a press release. He said none of the money in this company goes to the devil. That's probably correct. I am not going to critique Procter & Gamble at all. I am not going to say anything about that company because it was probably the truth. But it is interesting that on the Phil Donahue show, this president of Procter & Gamble finally admitted that he was a member of the Church of Satan. So maybe the company is clean as a whistle, but maybe sometimes powerful people slip into high places. I want you to understand that they are very, very highly educated. Notice this interesting term. I have never dabbled in witchcraft. I have never been intrigued. I've never practiced in any way. But a good general will study his enemy to understand how they think so that he knows how to commit the battle when they meet on the battleground. So I went to the local library and decided to read up on the witchcraft and to see what they believed. I was very unfamiliar with this fact. Every time I've brought it up, speaking in cities across the United States, no one has heard of this term. Let's read it. It's very important. The old "un" is a dialect term used to indicate the devil. Yet the old religion, that's a way of saying witchcraft, yet the old religion, with its root in nature, its nature worship, still lived on in the hearts and minds of the people. This way of referring to the devil as the old "un" is an instance of this. And here is the documentation. It's from a book printed in 1973. I acquired it at the branch division of my local library. It was missing soon after that. I've learned that occultists would rather steal their literature than purchase it. So, I got to thinking about this old term, the "un." And I said it's very well known in their language, in their communication, that they referred to the devil as "un." There is a deviled ham product. I won't mention it by name, but you could guess what the first two letters are. There's another very well-known product that men use. They purchase these products to fix up their house. There is a devil on the cover of all their paint cans, all their products, and of course they're located at Union, New Jersey. And that begins with two letters, UN. I decided to be bold. I wrote the Church of Satan. I told them I needed an application. They probably thought I would be a member right away. Please notice a few things from the header of the return letter. I have the application. If you're thinking about joining, see me later. I'll get you a copy. Please notice, here's that infamous inverted pentagram. The red circle is very important to the occult. It symbolizes the sun. It symbolizes sun worship. You may not think that's important. I have a dozen to 2 dozen ads where the sun is in the advertisement and the number 666 is also in the advertisement. You may notice there are hundreds of companies in the United States that dot their I, if they have the letter I in their name, with a small red dot. One oil company has one letter that is red and it stands out from the rest of the letters. Enough on the inverted pentagram, enough on the circle. Please notice there are Hebrew letters around the points of this inverted pentagram. I guess Satanists are intellectuals. It appears that they may know something about foreign languages. Please notice the post office box. Is it a coincidence? My question is, why would the postmaster allow some society, but you know we have freedom of religion in America, why would he allow someone like the Church of Satan to acquire a box number 666? Please file in your memory what state it is in, because we're going to do some wordplay on this state in just a moment. But for this little part, please notice the inverted pentagram. Let's go to Washington, D.C. This is the headquarters for Eastern Star. There are 2 inverted pentagrams in the iron grill work around the building. Even the ironwork has inverted pentagrams. I wonder about those fine ladies. Have they ever questioned anyone about the symbol for their organization? I think they need to band together and find a new one. Let's do a quick study from the Funkin Wagnall Standard Dictionary of Folklore about a character named Pan. Not everyone is familiar with this character Pan. It is actually a term used for the devil in Greece. You might remember the cartoons or drawings about Pan. But there are some things we need to note. In this little definition about Pan, we learn 2 or 3 important facts. Number 1, he was over reproduction of the flocks, usually the goat and the sheep. A lot of these occult groups are protecting what is known as fertility worship. We won't expound on that. You adults know exactly what I'm talking about when I say fertility worship. He had horns. He could only be found in the darkest forest if you went to search for Pan in the noonday sun. He was always in the darkest place. His mere presence created such fear, it is the origin of the word, panic. That's the origin of the word, because of the great fear he created. But this is 20th century America. Why would we begin to mention someone named Pan? Here's Pan on the cover of Vanity Fair. Again, here's Pan on the cover of the New Yorker. Not saying anything against these magazines. I read a lot of New Yorkers. It wasn't meant in any evil fashion. It's just showing that Pan is very well known, even if you make a cartoon or some little remark about Pan. But what is Pan doing in the middle of Indianapolis, in the middle of the concrete jungle downtown? Remember I said Pan dwelt in the darkest part of the forest? Right in the middle of the concrete jungle in Indianapolis, there's a statue of Pan in the trees. He's always found in the deep, dark forest. Also in Indianapolis, someone was playing word games, I believe, because there's Pan's consort, Diana. You can find the word Diana in Indiana or Indianapolis. Word games are prevalent in secret societies. Remember, we're looking for this creature named Pan. This is the Washington Cathedral. This is where your politicians go to worship on Sunday morning in Washington, D.C. It can be located by going to the highest point in Washington, D.C. It's interesting to me because in the Old Testament, the prophets of Baal, Baal, were always worshiping at the highest point. I went in and talked to the female reverend briefly, but please note how high, how tall this cathedral is. Please note the two doors at the bottom. Notice above the doors there is some type of sculpture. I won't hold this up too long. Actually, if you figure out what it is, it's very provocative because there are nude men and women in the sculpture over the doors where the people enter. I have enlargements, but we won't show them. I wonder what they worship at the cathedral. But I had to go looking around to see what I could find. So I went to the garden where the trees and the shrubs, and here was Pan at the Washington Cathedral in Washington, D.C. Probably just a harmless little statue. In 35 years of research, the biggest shock to come to me was that the people in secret societies and occult underground groups seem to know more about Scripture, seem to know more about Bible than people who carry one and profess to be God-believing Christian people. Now, they're very, very well versed in their beliefs and Christian beliefs also, and they love to play word games. Of course, Pennsylvania is named for that great man that had liberty, religious liberty in his state, William Penn. But please note that the Romans had another name for Pan. They called him Sylvanus, Silenus, Sylvan, Sylvan, a sylvan compass. There are towns in this country called Sylvan Grove because it's where there are trees. On this map you will note the largest national forest in the state of Pennsylvania. Both words can be punned into Pennsylvania if you're very observant. If you look close, you would have noted that the route number is 666. Here's a product advertised in Life magazine, 1955. It's called 666 and is for head colds. I have ads going back to 1937 advertising this product. I wonder why people would choose such a number for a product. Don't they think they might offend Christian people? I mean, everyone is familiar with that infamous number mentioned in the book of Revelation. Very few Christians realize the number appears twice in the Old Testament. If you'll do your homework, you'll find a common thread running between these verses. God knew everything from the beginning. I did a little research on this company. They are located in Jacksonville, Florida. I thought it was a big drug company. I drove down to take some photographs. It was just one little building under the trees. They had one bronze plaque on beside the door, and it was advertising this product. Maybe this is all they make. Please note the name of the drug company. A lot of people call the name Monticello. Actually, the correct pronunciation is Monticello. Monticello, two French words. So this product is manufactured at Monticello in Jacksonville, Florida. I'm not critiquing their product. I'm not saying that this is more than a coincidence, but I am noticing patterns about some of these numbers and names in the United States. Please keep it in mind while we study this great road. This is a federal road. It was in 4 states 2 years ago. The state of Arizona voted to change this route number. They said we do not want Route 666 in our state anymore. I think that's the way things should be done. If your product number or your name begins to offend people, why not change it? Why not take into consideration even the beliefs of Christian people, whether there is no evil intention at the beginning or not? Here we have a road. This is a federal road. It goes between states. It used to go up from the Mexican border up through the state of Arizona. It turned east and went into Gallup, New Mexico. Then it turned north and went through the southwestern corner of Colorado. Then it turned west and found itself in the state of Utah. And that's where it ended, at Monticello, Utah. Now we have a match. Twice we've used the term Monticello in association with the number 666. But then again, I wonder how many people even read Hebrew. I'm not a scholar. I do a little Hebrew studies to see what I can find in the Old Testament. The Hebrew word ta means a mark. This road ends in Utah, and it is actually the serpent hanging on the cross, because this road weaves itself around four corners, USA. In 1984, here's proof from Time magazine that they made a specific number appear when discussing the relationship of a new phone that they were going to promise the American people. They said, we can put a phone in every automobile. They had a name for this new system. This is where it's being introduced, 1984, Time magazine. Bells are ringing on the road. I think that's great. Every American can call home from the automobile. On a cellular, did you catch that word? C-E-L-L, remember Monticello? Every American may call home on the way from the office on their new cellular phone. In this article, we are told that the FCC allotted 666 channels for cellular telephone. I think that's a great number. This is Time magazine, 1972. If you are not aware of the fact, there is an occult revival in the United States. Do not get angry. I think it's the only revival going on in the United States. Please note, there's that five-pointed inverted pentagram again. There are a lot of symbols, and these symbols go beyond just advertising. Of course, Time magazine did not mean this in an evil way. I'm not critiquing Time. I get Time and Newsweek every week. I have for a decade. But I'm saying they even know it's portrayed, showing you that these occult groups use this inverted pentagram. But you can leave logos. You can leave words between sentences. And you can go all across the country. And these people are using messages. They're sending them in a variety of ways. This is Athena. This is a statue. This is located in Nashville, Tennessee. If you would like to see how tall this statue is, please note one of my friends traveling with us at the bottom. This is in the Parthenon. This building is within a quarter inch of the actual size of the real Parthenon that was built in Greece. Now, in this Parthenon, there are a number of things to denote. When you go, they give you the official lecture, and these are the largest bronze doors in the United States. This statue is so high, don't forget that little statue she's holding is a god called Nike, N-I-K-E. The word means to rule over, to conquer, or victory. We'll come up again with that word later in this presentation. Please make that note. Please file that in your memory. That's the god Nike. I think I've heard that term before. If you're very observant, you would have noticed something beside Athena's shield. The city of Athens was named after this goddess that protected the city, Athena. Did you notice anything by the shield? We find a huge serpent. My favorite thing to do in researching is to do word studies. They call it etymology. I love to study the origin of words. I found in my concordance, most Christians have a Strong's or Young's Concordance. Sometimes it's located in their online Bible on their computer. You can look up Greek words and Hebrew words that appear in your Bible. I found a word very close to Nash. Remember, we're in Nashville, Tennessee. One word said a charmer. When I did research on this particular word for charmer, it said to control someone by repetition in music. For all you Nashville country fans, but it could just be a coincidence. Maybe it was not by design. So I studied a little further, and I found that this word gnash was also related to a word that meant the bite of a serpent. I wonder if they know that in Nashville. Then again, it could all just be a coincidence, and of course these things are built simply for the tourist, you know. Here's the Parthenon. They were renovating it when I was there. The next time you go through Nashville, turn off the interstate. It's only 2 blocks away. It's quite interesting, some of the things that are built in the United States. Please do not tell my friend Al Cuppet that one of his relatives are on the statue at this university. There was a movie on cable. Sometimes you can get a copy of it. It was called The Brotherhood of the Bell, B-E-L-L. In this particular movie, our hero finds a conspiracy because all the men in politics, all the men in big business have attended the same college. It's just a fictional movie. Movies are created for you to take a break from reality, so don't think too analytical when you're watching a movie. In The Brotherhood of the Bell, the college was St. George's College. But of course, it's just pure fiction. But again, I know where there's a university outside of Washington, D.C. that does a lot of controlling connected with politics. There have been books written about Georgetown University. It's amazing how fiction parallels reality. In Washington, D.C., there are a lot of buildings that show a lot of symbolism. You've seen them. Why would you waste a transparency on the Washington Monument? Maybe you should ask them for the actual height and add it to the width and then to the length, and then maybe you would like to guess what number comes up. In this building, there are curious streets shaped in various fashions around the little White House. Take a street map, check those streets, you'll find actual signs of the planets for Uranus, Neptune, all around the White House, hidden in the streets. My wife was doing some research, and she found a little group called the Society for Endangered Species. She told me it was located on Pennsylvania Avenue. So twice when I was in Washington, D.C., I looked for this little office where this Society for Endangered Species was headquartered. I had the hardest time finding it. This is on Pennsylvania, but note at the end of the street is the Capitol. It's not in the Federal Triangle looking up towards the Capitol. It is beyond the Federal Triangle. In other words, the Capitol blocks this part of Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania picks up on the other side. So I finally found this building on Pennsylvania Avenue. I didn't go up to the offices. I just wanted a photograph, and of course I wanted a photograph of the street address. Please note the word Pennsylvania, and here's that big infamous number popping up again. Here's their back door. You couldn't see the Pennsylvania with the other photograph because of the trees, but then I asked, how many facts running concurrently with the same words and the same numbers, how many do we need to make it a conspiracy? Do we need 100 examples? Do we need 500? Now you know why I have 1 million ads at my home. There's a favorite number that appears all over Washington, D.C. Here's a bank. Maybe it's a coincidence. I'm not critiquing this bank. I just wonder why people would purchase a building that even had this number in the address. I think I'd take the one next door. Now, in Washington, D.C., there's a lot of pressure. What do people do for pressure? Well, they love to go out to a movie. So here's the theater where most people go in Washington, D.C. when they're wanting to unwind, they're wanting that release, they want to get away from reality for just a little bit and unwind. The name of it is the Janus Building. I've been reading Alexander Hislop's monumental book, The Two Babylons, for 30-some years. If you'll look in the index, you'll see that the term Janus was always associated with the number 666. But of course, this could be just one huge cosmic coincidence. You'll have to forgive me. I think I have a transparency out of place. I've been traveling a lot this week. I don't even know how that one got in there. Okay. Here's an old ad, 40 years old, from Life magazine. It's the American Railroads. And please note, someone is communicating with someone else. Someone knows how to communicate in a quick symbol, just a couple of words. I think we have a speaker coming up on the Prophecy Club tour that will be on this subject because he is an authority. But quickly, I would like to show you some things I've noticed. This is Indianapolis. This is the Masonic Lodge. I came across it at nighttime. Someone sent me down there. It looked like something out of 1001 Arabian Nights. People fly in from all over the world to view the architecture. If you go to Alexandria, Virginia, you will note this building. This is called the Masonic Memorial to George Washington. It's a very interesting building. I've been inside. You can go to the top. It's built in an incredible manner. It's a great building. Please, the next time you're in Alexandria, please go inside this building, the Masonic Memorial to George Washington. Of course, it just happens to be 333 feet tall. Now, in Washington, D.C., there's only one statue of a Confederate war general. This is that Confederate war general. His name is Albert Pike. A little research will show that Albert Pike was the founder of the Scottish Rite, the southern jurisdiction of Freemasonry. He was also one of the 3 men who founded the Ku Klux Klan after the Civil War because he was a Confederate war general. I could expound on this subject. I'll leave it to other speakers. Yes, there is evidence he was a Satanist. I had to take that photograph over the top of the police cars because this building to the right is the Justice Department. I wonder where they plan to place things. Does anyone do any research anymore? This is the building where all the high masons, your politicians from either party, meet on Albert Pike's birthday. This is the House of the Temple in Washington, D.C. All politicians appear there on Albert Pike's birthday, and they shake hands and pat each other on the shoulder, and you still think they're both arguing with each other, correct? It's called thesis, antithesis, synthesis. It's all created for control. Please notice the street address. When you go there, notice it is 1733. I wonder how much manipulation, how much bargaining has to be done to make sure you get a street address that has the right number. Yes, that is a Sphinx. Let's study this building a little more. Notice when you go in the entrance, high above, there is some very detailed artwork outside the building. You may not be able to tell, you may not be able to examine it at first glance, so we'll take a little close-up to the left and right. Notice that was a serpent. Again, if you were a good student, you had been reading Alexander Hislop's book, The Two Babylons. Please note, I will repeat it, it's in the top 10 Christian books of all time. He has a woodcut drawing about the twin serpents. Remember, I told you, make a note about the red circle, the red O. It deals with sun worship. You will see the rays of the sun coming out. There's much more symbolism. They have the double-headed eagle. But let's move on. Here are some transparencies of a place you've already heard about. There's that great Masonic symbol, the compass and the square. This is Denver International Airport. The next time you're going through, please take some time to look around. Now, a lot of people have seen these mysterious murals on the wall. If you'll be patient, I'll show you something beyond the murals. There must be a lot of significance. There must be a lot of symbolism. Why does this gal have a cross? I've stood there for hours with people who are trying to figure out the symbolism in these strange murals at the Denver International Airport. I think it would take someone well-versed in clinical psychology to even make inroads trying to figure out what in the world do these murals represent. These are very well known. You can even bring them up on the internet if you want to study some of these pictures yourself. But I decided to look around a little further. And when I looked around downstairs where they load the luggage, I found two curious creatures high up on a post. Here's one. He's in a suitcase. There's a plaque for him. He also has a companion on the other side of the building. They are both located in the International Airport. The next time you're there, please go downstairs. Please take a look around, because there's much, much symbolism. I talked to a lady who grew up there. She used to ride horses there. It was her home place. She gave me firsthand information about a lot of underground dwellings, a lot of land that had been manipulated. Please check out the International Airport. Not only is there symbolism at the International Airport in Denver, there's symbolism all over the USA if you just knew what to look for and knew how to analyze on your own. There are a lot of people have seen or heard about the Council of Foreign Relations located in New York, usually abbreviated as CFR. A lot of research has been done, a lot of names have been named, people in government, people on the news, and so this seems to be a hotbed for some type of inner workings in New York. So I wouldn't just merely go up to take a photograph. I always have to go looking around. Please don't tell them what type of car I drive. That's me sitting in the Bronco. My photographer's across the street. I don't want them to know when I show up. So please note very carefully, the building to your right is the CFR. It's the side of the Council of Foreign Relations in New York. At the bottom, there seems to be two doors that look almost identical. One door seems to be a delivery door to the CFR. The other door, the same size, is going to a building on the opposite street facing the opposite way. It had an address number 660. That didn't mean anything special to me, so I walked on down the street. I was talking to my photographer, and I looked over his head, and I noticed this curious little incident where two numbers were lined up one over the other. So one of those doors was 660, but the other door was 666. So I found it very interesting that the building that is directly behind the Council of Foreign Relations is 666 Park Avenue. I don't know why the Foreign Relations building did not get that number. So there are all types of games that are played with numbers, names, and symbolism. I went to Kent Island, Sunny Isle, Kent, away from Washington, D.C., and I looked around. There wasn't much there, but I was familiar with some wordplay. The wordplay was this funny word Kent, and the zip code there on Sunny Island, Kent, had 3 6s. I took note of that,